Want to know what the movers and shakers of New Hampshire's performing arts are thinking? Welcome to New Hampshire Unscripted with your host, Ray Dudley.
And in this episode, well, I sit down with Brett Mallard, and here's some of the things we covered. Did you know he has 40 harmonicas? Yeah, don't even go there with me. He has his own blues radio show. Did you know that he thinks he's very introverted? Yeah, I don't think so either. He talks in this one about having a stalker. Yeah, I don't even have a fan. Well, he and I get into a little bit about the fragility of the egos of actors. We get into a little bit about the ins and outs of producing that radio show that he has. And then we also talk about wanting to broadcast from the NHTAs. Katie, Gina, are you listening? All right. I think you're really going to like this one. Enjoy.
This Latin, the Dies Irae, which is a Latin chant, Gregorian chant about...
We're talking Sweeney Todd.
Yeah.
Gregorian chant. It's based on Gregorian chant.
Eight notes from this thing called the Dies Irae. Every song, it's in it. If you listen to it somewhere, it's in it. And Sondheim did it on purpose. And again, that whole chant is about, the end days and Christ coming back. And so I'm going to kind of focus on that.
Okay, I would never have gotten that interpretation. And I saw Matt McGonigal do it down at the Audi. I did not get that interpretation of it. It does not kind of lend itself, at least originally.
Well, if you look, the song Epiphany, and for years when I've done the role, I've thought, well, Epiphany means a bright idea. Mm-hmm. It doesn't. It means awakening as Christ. That's what the word Epiphany means if you look it up. And so then it was like, when I found that, I was like, holy shit. That's the moment in the show when he realizes I'm the one who has to take care of weeding out the chaff in the world. And one of the lines in it is, he's killing people because there's two kinds of people. There's the one with his foot in everyone's face, and the one who just wants to die and get it over with. So, I don't know. It should be fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it.
See, it's funny. I was going to ask you about it because I had seen that it came up, and I was wondering. That's exactly what I was wondering was why you liked it so much, because you mentioned it was one of your favorite roles.
Yeah, it's just the redemption, the revenge. It's just so many things about it. I think there's so many the levels of the character and what they go through, the arcs that they have in the show just fascinate me. Mrs. Lovett fascinates me. I think she's the true villain in the show, and she's the comic relief, but she's the true villain. She's the one who convinces Sweeney to do what he does, And then when Sweeney does it, then all of a sudden he goes and, oh yeah, hey, that's a great idea. But yeah, that's a great show.
So the three times you've done it, had any of them been your favorite?
Well, yeah, the first one I did, Seacoast, was my first professional lead. It was, I beat out some pretty big heavy hitters in the Seacoast community. I was unknown, had basically come from doing community theater stuff, a couple of roles at the Palace here, and never really got a good role. Like, I worked with George and I worked with Scott, and I was always in those supporting roles, Constable Locke and Music Man and Miles and Forum. And so I never really had the opportunity to get that really meaty leading role. And when I walked in there, and Spiros Valutis, I don't know if you know him, he's a pretty big time Boston director. I think he's one of the foremost leaders on Sondheim too. He just knows his work. And he basically said, the Rogersons were running the theater at the time, and they were looking at people like Bill Humphreys, who had been there for years, and Steve Deskoulis, and no, these are our people. And Spiro said, no, that's Sweeney, that's him. So it was pretty cool.
That's a big pat on the back.
Yeah,
that is cool though.
So I think we all have that one role. I don't know what yours is, but I'm sure there must be.
Well, until we had done True, I didn't really have one that I True solidified.
Oh, wow. Great.
Yeah. I would do it again in a heartbeat. I didn't think I would because it's 2 hours and you're out there by yourself. But it's the only show I have ever done where after it that I had a demand encore curtain call.
Wow.
I got a standing ovation, took the curtain, left, and they wouldn't stop. And I had to come back out, take a second bow. And Matt said he was in the sound booth, and he's like, please, God, let him come out. Please let him come back out, because he thought maybe I'd come back to the dressing room. But I've never experienced that before.
It's a great feeling, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've never had that in a curtain call, but I have had walk-on applause, which is, I would guess, is similar.
That would be fascinating, too. But when we had done it, it was very brutal, though. I mean, to be on stage by yourself is pretty exhausting.
It's got to be very vulnerable.
Yeah. And
you got no one else to lean on.
No, and Matt had said to me that night that I had that breakdown thing, Matt said, look, if you want, we'll strategically put some cue cards around the set. And I said, no.
Oh, well, see, I would have. I've actually done, I did a murder mystery. M is for murder.
Yep.
And I played the inspector. And so thank God I was able to have a notepad. And I wrote every freaking line in that show in my note. Because it was, one of those things where memorization was a challenge for me. And I said, I'm not going to go through these things. The angst was way too much for me.
Isn't that terrible?
Yeah.
That'll age you. I mean, that
yeah, it's not good for you at this age.
I know. God dang. I just can't take it. I can't take it. So what else are you doing lately? I don't want to get into your blue stuff yet, but
no, I mean, theater-wise, I have not done a lot. The last thing I did was Annie, which was I directed at the same time I was doing Seacoast Rep. They were going through a flux there with their artistic director, and they had gotten rid of him, and as a result, some people left, and one of them was the person who was directing Annie. So they said, please, you've done it for us before. And I was like, yeah. In hindsight, I should never have done it, because I had been in rehearsal for Sweeney, and then I did my first week of rehearsals for Annie, which at the same time I was in rehearsal for Sweeney, and then went into tech week for Sweeney, took a week off of Annie, and then came right out of show into Annie's tech week. So, it was brutal. And,
wow.
And I was driving back and forth from Manchester to Haverhill, and then Manchester to Portsmouth, and I was like, I'm 60 years old, dude. I know.
Yeah.
I do this.
I know. I see. I'm often tempted to go out and watch shows at the Seacoast, because they do a lot of good stuff for me.
They do.
But it's an hour ride one way.
Mm-hmm. And it's not the most comfortable. It's one of the least comfortable theaters to sit in, I think, in the world.
Yeah.
It's great sightlines because it's got the stadium seating, which I love. And you're right on the action, similar to what I'm guessing that is here.
Yeah.
So you're right in the stage, the front row, but they're just not comfortable seats. But I love their work out there. I have always loved it. It's always been my favorite theater.
It's high quality stuff.
I think so, yeah.
I mean, from what I've seen, I saw Hunchback out there.
They did a great job with that show.
I loved it.
Yeah, I actually pitched that for Actor Singers.
Oh, yeah?
With Judy
Hayward.
So she went in and she pitched it. We haven't heard yet, so we'll see. But
when do they make the decision on that stuff?
I'm guessing we'll know within a month or two.
Yeah.
It's not the slot that we auditioned for isn't until fall or spring of 2021, so it'll be a ways off. Sweeney is fall of 2020.
They're doing Sweeney down there too?
No. That I'm doing at Seacoast.
Oh,
directing it
at the Seacoast?
Seacoast Rep. Yeah, I'm directing it there.
Oh, I didn't know they were doing it. Did you say tonight earlier they were doing it? That must have gone right over the
next to the last show in next season.
Oh my God.
Their next season is killer.
Yeah?
Killer.
Well, they're doing
Ragtime
Assassins, too.
Chorus Line. They just did Assassins. But they're doing a Ragtime Chorus Line, Sweeney Todd, Sound of Music. It's like all these classics that they're bringing back, which I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. Because they, for a while, were doing like those fringe things, Reefer Madness and that kind of stuff, Avenue Q, which was great show. But I'm glad to see them going back to some more traditional musical stuff. It's kind of cool to see.
Well, they fill a lot of seats.
They do. They have a full month run, and they're full. Thursday, Friday, 2 on Saturday, and a Sunday show.
Yeah.
And they almost
they can leave the avant-garde stuff to the Players Ring.
They can. And Portsmouth is enough of a tourist town to where they have the traffic, so they get the houses filled.
So is that the only show? Do you do a lot of work with them?
For years,
I have. Doesn't live like right next door.
No, and well, my son just got artistic director this season, so I think that's one of the reasons why I had done this show 20 years ago at the Rep. It was all of ours, mine and my son's case, so his partner. It was his first show as an introduction, seeing something at the Rep, and so it was kind of all of our introduction there. So he was like, "We've got to do this, Dad." And I was like, "All right." So when they did the season reveal, it was pretty cool because he asked me to come back and do Sweeney at the season reveal to play the role, and they put up a video of the show from 20 years ago.
No kidding.
That they had in the archives.
Oh my God!
Oh my God! It was like scary watching it. I was like, holy shit! But it was pretty nice, heartwarming.
So is that the version that you're going to probably do from the religious tone to it?
I mean, I'm going to stick period-wise, stick to the same, but it's going to. I'm hoping, I mean, people have expectations, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm hoping we can put enough influences tech-wise and character development-wise that we'll be able to get that message across, that look at it from a different way. Yeah. Obviously, the director's notes will help, in the playbill. Hey, look at it from this perspective. See what you think.
Yeah. So you do Seacoast. On the other end, you're doing actor-singers?
Well, again, I haven't been there.
Traveling.
I haven't been at actor-singers since before I left to live on the West Coast. I have not done a lot. I did a couple of shows with Majestic when I came back. I directed a couple of shows. I directed Barefoot in the Park for them. I directed Almost Maine for them. And then I was in Miracle on 4th Street with them. And I did Dial M. So I did most of what I've done since I've been back from Phoenix was there. Mm-hmm. But I've always, the Rep has always been a soft spot for me, so anytime I can work there.
So for them, do you have to go through the whole audition process, or is it because they know you now that they just knock on the door? And
I guess because, the directing gig I got because, my association with the show in the past, and Brandon, I'm sure had a lot to do with that. But I've always auditioned there. I've never had, no, I can't say that. They have called me up for a couple of things, but not a lot.
Do they get their stuff from the NHTAs? I mean,
they do NHTAs. They have New York, they're going down in a week or two to New York and doing season auditions in the city. And then they do NHTAs, and then they have each show, the director will have auditions in Portsmouth for that as well.
I hate auditioning. Do you like auditioning?
I cannot stand it. I do not audition well. And it's funny because I do all the things that I teach people. I have a repertoire of songs. I have
your monologues
that I'll do, but I never do well at them. And I always wonder why I guess it's because they've seen me do work out elsewhere. That must have a lot to do with it. But I hate them.
I would much rather perform.
I hate directing and doing auditions. I hate sitting there and watching.
Really?
I just hate the whole process. Oh. I would much rather call you up and say, Ray, I've got this role for you. Can you come do it? I would much rather do that.
No kidding. Yeah. So I would not have guessed that. I never know that there was anxiety on that side of the table. I'm not sure why I don't like it. I know there are people who love it. And I'm not sure why they love it.
Yeah.
But for me, it's just filled with so much angst and anxiety. And I can't, in 30 seconds or a minute, give you, I don't feel like I can give you what.
Well, especially to someone you've never seen before, right?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
I don't know. I can't do it.
I think, I always feel like I come off pretentious and arrogant, which I may very well be, but I always feel that.
And, maybe that's it. It's very surface level. There's no depth. There can't be any depth to it.
How can there be?
No.
How can there possibly be? And I find it. There are so many times from a director's perspective where I'll go into an audition and you see that. You see people are just trying way too hard and they're putting on, and it's like, God, one of the things when I direct that I'll always say to people, stop acting. Stop acting is not acting. Acting's reacting. Be yourself. I'd much rather see Ray Dudley on stage than, someone pretentiously trying to be something that they're not.
And it's painful when that happens.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's embarrassing.
Yes, yeah.
You get embarrassed for them, like you said, you walked out of shows at intermission. I've left shows where I can't watch this anymore because it's just so uncomfortable.
Yeah. Isn't that funny, huh?
I guess it has a lot to do with we're egotistical, I think. All of us, we wouldn't be in this profession if we didn't have a certain level of it, somewhere.
Yeah. I've had that argument with my wife about shows, and she says, you're always gauging it. I said, you know what? I think you're going to find that in any field. I'm sure athletes go watch each other and they're like, no, I could have hit that pitch, or, I could have thrown that, or whatever, It's not just...
No, it isn't.
It's not just on us.
It's anything that you have to perform in. And that you could be a software engineer to do the same thing.
Yeah. So look at a code and go, nah, I could have done that in 3 lines.
Yeah. Why didn't I do that? I could have done it better. I mean, I think it's everywhere. But I hope to God that people in those professions aren't as self-critical as we are.
How do I get into this topic? I think that there's a lot of need in acting. There's a lot more going on psychologically than just you'd find out in a hockey rink or on a baseball diamond.
Yeah,
there's something
at an emotional level.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, people can deny it, but I cannot to try to be somebody else, to have a need to be somebody else. You can say you're playing all you want, but there's something there. I mean, because you're going to be trying and hopefully succeeding in doing things that you yourself probably would never do. Mm-hmm. And why you would want to do that, at least the guy out in the baseball diamond is throwing, and he's throwing real pitches. He's not trying to pretend to be throwing.
Right. Yeah.
We're pretending. So I did want to bring you in because one of the things I wanted to learn, I always want to learn more about the people that I know, especially in the field that we know. And I keep seeing on your Facebook page these posts about the blues, and harmonicas, and I'm like, wow, is this the same guy who's, I see like something else, I'm thinking, what is this about? So how did you come about, so do you play the harmonica?
I try to play the harmonica. I do. I'll tell you where it started. So years ago, when I was a police officer in Manchester for many years, and when I got off the police department, I started doing radio, and I got a job. Before I got the job, I used to go to WFEA down in Manchester. They had a DJ by the name of Conrad Kane, who
I remember that name.
Yeah, he did the mornings there, and I would go and I'd hang out with him, and I would, because radio fascinated me. I can remember as a little kid sitting with my 45 and a cut of Zager and Evans in the year 25, and I would play that, and I would play, well, here we are, we're going to play Zager and Evans, and I can remember doing that as a kid, and so it always fascinated me. And when I had the opportunity, I would go, I visited him, I was working elsewhere, but I'd go and I'd spend time with him, and the opportunity came around where he was like, hey, the guy who's doing the night shift, he's got something come up. You've been in here. You see how we do this with the carts and everything. And you think it's something, you might be able to come in and cover a shift for him. And I was like, yeah, I think I'd love that, right? So he said, all right, all you got to do is this. You put the carts in and you play the music and, you do the commercial breaks and that's it. You don't talk or anything. I was like, okay. Well, I figured if I didn't take that opportunity.
Wrong person.
Yeah, right? I figured if I didn't take that opportunity, it would never happen. And so I did a show. I'd get on the air, I'd rip the news wire off, and I was reading the weather. And so the next day, the phone rings at home, and it's Conrad, and he's like, hey, how'd it go last night? I was like,
because I'm sure he had no idea.
He said, I think it went well. No, yeah, right? He says, yeah. He said, we all heard you. I was like, oh, okay. He said, you think you might like to do this on a regular basis? And I was like, I would love it. So I got a job working the night shift at WFEA. And then Conrad moved to WNNH, which was Oldies 99 here in Concord, when they first opened in the early 90s. And he said, Clark Schmidt, who was running the station at the time, asked about someone who could do the evenings again, the 7 at midnight or something.
Was that when they were right off 89 there?
Yeah, right on Bow Street.
Yeah.
Yep. And Conrad said, I've got just the guy. And so I went up there and I worked there for years. And then I was a news director in Nashua at this little AM station, WNVU. And so, and all during that time, I had a mobile DJ business. And I always loved the blues. Actually, I shouldn't say I always. In the 80s, I got to love the blues with, remember the Fabulous Thunderbirds? Kim Wilson, Ain't That Tough Enough?
Yeah.
So that came out, and it was like, wow, I love this music. And so I started studying a lot of the older blues, like, just Little Walter and, Howlin' Wolf and B.B. King and all of these guys, and I just fell in love with the music. And so, advance years later, and, I'm older, and I'm looking for things to do that satisfy that, that thingness that makes us act.
Right.
And I was like, I can do radio again, and I think I want to learn how to play the harmonica because I'd heard so much of it, So I went out and I bought, I have 40 harmonicas now. What? I've got, the sound systems for it and everything. I don't play professionally. I don't play with a band. But I do love to try and play, and I have a lot of fun with it. But in the interim, I got back into radio. And I have this internet radio thing that I did. I started an internet radio station 10 years ago, and that's been running for 10 years. I'm not managing that one anymore, but I now have a blues station that runs 24/7, that I produce and manage everything. We have syndicated shows from all over the country. People submit, who are nationally recognized blues hosts for DJ shows, and those run. And then I created my own show, which started as a 2-hour syndicated show. And I would do I would do an interview every show with a blues artist. And I got to talk to some of the greatest blues people in the world, and then we would cut that interview up and play music in between the cuts and stuff like that. So it's been a blast. I just love it. And it satisfies me in a similar way that theater has for so many years, without the angst that we talked about of having to audition, of having to, it's my show. And yet I get the same kind of feelings of performing and having a show, quote unquote, at my own, my own level. And I can sit in my pajamas and, record it at home and submit it to the stations that are running the show. And I just picked up a live show that I'm doing, which is exciting because it's on this station called Blues Music Fan Radio, which is one of the better all blues stations on the internet right now. And so they picked me up, and I'm loving it. I just love it.
So this is really fascinating. It's funny how parallel things run. When I was in my 30s, radio was something I was always wanting to do too. And as time was moving on, I was not doing it. But it was always on my list. And even so, in my 30s, I had called over to WGIR one time, and I asked for the station manager, and I got the guy. I said, look, what I would like to do is I want to learn. I'll come in third shift. I'll do the trash for you. I just want to learn the business. He said, no. Can't do it because of union things, blah, blah, blah. Right. And I was begging him. Wouldn't let me do it.
Oh, that's funny.
So I'm envious that you were able to get in it.
That's exactly how I got in.
I was dying to do it. I just loved the whole way it worked and functioned. And so this, for me, doing the podcast is the fulfillment of that. I can check that off. Because, it's not radio, and it's not going out to a gajillion people.
It doesn't matter, Ray. It doesn't matter. It's something that satisfies, again, something inside you that we need. Yeah. And whether it's our ego or whatever it is, and I don't know as though I can pinpoint it, but it does. It's from a psychological level, from an emotional level, it just satisfies. And it's difficult to explain to someone who doesn't do it. They're like, what are you talking about?
It has been on my list for literally 20 or 30 years. Literally, it's been sitting there. I knew before I died, one way or the other, it's one of the few things I had left that I wanted to accomplish. Crazier, but I was going to do it.
But see, this format is awesome because we joked, because people listening right now don't realize what happened here. So for 30 minutes, I came in this room with Ray and sat down, and he popped his phone on, and I had no idea. And so for 30 minutes, we just talked, and so that was a great move. In hindsight, I'm like, wait a minute, you just recorded that? So you're good at what you do. So don't sell yourself short. I don't know if you do that with all your
blackmailing you
guests,
later. Just leave a check for the stuff that you don't want on.
Well, I do like to start the conversation right from the beginning. I don't like to have an intro and all that. I'll do that at home later. But,
right.
Well, because I just, it's conversation with friends, and that's the way I like it.
And that's great. I mean, and to your point when you started this conversation about the harmonica and the blues aspects, is that we know people for years. I mean, we've been acquaintances for 30 years, 25 easily, right?
Yeah.
And yet, how well do you really know anyone, especially in this field where, the theater, where you see each other for a couple of months and then you go, or maybe a couple of weeks at the most, and you won't see each other. You see what other people are doing in the community, but you don't go to every show. You don't, you don't often socialize with people.
And when you're done with the show, you may not see them again for...
Yeah. And quite frankly, I think as actors, we're probably the worst in social environments anyway, so we don't socialize well. I don't, and I know I've had this conversation with people like George Peele. We just don't. We don't, we're odd. I feel I am. I mean, people always, but Brett, you're the extrovert. You're the guy at the party who's going to. It's like, you don't really know me.
Yeah. I've always
it's painful.
Right. Yeah. Right. Well, I consider myself an introverted extrovert.
Yeah.
You're the extrovert because you do theater and you're on stage, but when I'm off stage, it's pretty lonely.
Yeah. I'm going to give you a very personal thing. For the last 5 or 6 years, I have been receiving these texts, nasty, just mean-spirited at me, my family, my kids. And I look at it and it's like, they're touching on all the things that as an actor, we feel bad about ourselves anyways. And I have, I look back and say, who could be so mean-spirited to do something like that?
Were these anonymous?
They spoof their number so you don't know who it is. And they know, like he knows, I say he, I have a suspicion as to who it might be, but they know about, and it's not uncommon. I've talked to other people where it's happened. And for some reason, they're hung up on you, and it's just, it's crazy. But again, the point that I was trying to make is that as actors in this field, we are very insecure, and we have a lot of things that are very fragile. And when someone realizes that and then takes advantage of it, God, it's crushing. It's really crushing.
I have not had that particular experience, and I'm glad I haven't, but I don't let a lot of people know, but I am very fragile. It's one of the reasons we talked earlier about I hate auditioning. It has something to do with that.
Rejection is horrible,
I can't.
Yeah.
I am terrible. I can't stand it. The whole process, my ego cannot take it. It cannot take it. And I'm grateful for the people who have called me up.
Exactly.
And asked me to perform.
That I can do.
Yeah, I don't have. So to have somebody who would maybe call me out on stuff, there's no way. It would freak me right out.
Oh my God, it's the worst feeling in the world.
I don't have it.
I don't even know why I brought it up. I think maybe I'm hoping they're listening. I don't know. I'm calling you out now.
That would be just a terrible thing. I mean, I can't. So on one level, I'm going to say many, but I'm thinking it's closer to almost all actors live this Wizard of Oz, the man behind the curtain kind of thing, where we're putting stuff out on stage because it's not the person behind the curtain. If you pulled back the curtain on a lot of us, I think you'd find a lot of broken glass and
and I think you asked earlier about why Sweeney Todd, and I think that may be one of the reasons that from a psychological perspective and an emotional level, that character touches more to those things in myself that are real to me than any other thing that I've done. So I think that may be one of the reasons why I'm so drawn to that. As in, like we discussed, people like George, who, with Don Quixote, and, Scott with the comic, guy. Yeah. Those are things that help us, even though they're painful, they still help us in a way. They're cathartic. Is that the right word? Cathartic?
Yeah.
In kind of healing us in some way.
It's funny because I had both George and Scott in the booth here, and I was expecting totally something different because of their outside persona. And when they both came in, for the most part, they're like us right now, very serious.
Oh, yeah.
And I had Greg Boguson, he's a comedian. And same thing. I'm expecting maybe I'll have this jovial hour, but when you get right down to it, it's just another guy.
It is.
with another, life that in some cases didn't turn out right, and, a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And it's pretty fascinating.
And it is fascinating because, again, theater is that outlet that heals us, And I wish more people were exposed to that, quite frankly. I think the world would be a much nicer place. I think we're, as actors, we're very empathic. We're very caring. We can be jerks. I shouldn't speak for. I can be a jerk. I know that. But I think for the most part, we are kinder people. I would hope so.
Yeah. Well, if so, mainly.
Although I am a Republican.
There you go. There. You had to. That's it. Show's over. Done. The phone. The lines will be lighting up. Lighting up. Well, I'm hoping that maybe that's because we can do things with our emotions that we couldn't do in real life. So we can get them out on stage. We can yell, scream, cry, laugh. When we may end up otherwise holding that in.
Yeah.
For life.
Yeah.
There are people who go through life harboring pains, but we at least have the ability to release them in a third-party kind of way.
Yeah, I think we still harbor them, but yeah, I think that it is a very, very good way of releasing a lot of that. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to tell you a story here.
Just between you and I.
I put myself in a rehab one time. And that's another whole story. But when I was in there, you have to go through some counseling. And so I was talking with this psychologist or whatever, and we had been talking about my life. And so I grew up a very broken home kind of thing. My mom, I didn't really know her for years. Back then, this was like in the 50s, she had gone through like 3 electro things on the brain, shock treatments. Yep. Took a lot of Valium. My dad worked 3 jobs, so there weren't a lot of adults around, and so that whole bonding process kind of was missing a bit, I guess. And the psychologist said, "What do you do late?" I go, "Well, I do a lot of theater," and so that would make sense.
Yeah,
because on one level, he said, you have no identity, and so being an actor allows you to create an identity, and you can pour that out and be anything you want. And that gets back to your point, I think, about, we don't ever get over the brokenness on some level, but I think we do get to put a lot of it out there and hopefully leave it out there. I mean, the fact that we just said we're really introverts means we kind of hide a lot of it anyway in our house, or whatever. Yeah. All right, so that was a little dark. So I want to talk about the nuts and bolts, about the blues thing.
Yeah.
Okay, and all of that. So do you have a home setup?
I do. I have a studio at the house.
You do?
Yeah. Not as elaborate as this, but very, very close to it. I've got the boom mic, and I've got the phenomenal system, and I have professional grade software that I use for all the music. And I've got.
Do you go live, or is it pre-recorded and then you send it somewhere?
So, for the last couple of years, it's been pre-recorded. I'll record the show and then disseminate it out to stations throughout the country, and actually globally. I've had some overseas that have actually picked it up. But this new station that I'm doing once a week is a live show. So you literally log in, and it's cool because they have broadcasters. It's kind of like the PBS of radio, where they have broadcasters from around the country who just have a passion to do it, and they log on from their homes to the single IP address, and they broadcast live. And then the next DJ will pick it up, and then the next DJ after that. So this DJs from Norway and France and England and Canada and the U.S. and South America, all who have this passion for the blues, who are on the station, logging in and doing it live. So I do it both ways to answer the question. I have a recorded, syndicated show that I send out once a week. And then I do this live show, which just recently started on bluesmusicfan.com. And then I also report. So, I report to Roots Music Reports. I was reporting to Living Blues magazine.
What does that mean?
These are like Playbill.
Yeah.
or like Billboard,
You're writing
like Billboard.
things?
You're reporting what you're playing, so it goes towards the music charts, the blues charts.
Oh, wow.
So you're literally helping artists to get their music exposed, and here's the top 10 this week, based on the Roots Music Reports. The show reports them, and there's DJs around the country that do the same thing, that make up the charts. And so it's a lot of fun, and it's a level of professionalism that I, quite frankly, didn't expect when I first got into it on an internet level. That's again very satisfying for me.
So this, I don't know if anybody else cares. Anybody who's listening may want to just snap it off right now. But this really fascinates me.
Yeah.
So kind of walk me through how you prepare for a show, and then are you literally sitting in a room by yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Not pretending. I was going to say pretending to be broadcasting, but you are. You go to commercial breaks and all. So take me through prep first.
Yeah. So for prep, I will usually prepare the playlist 2 or 3 days in advance. I usually, for the syndicated show, I usually tape it on a Monday or a Tuesday. But I'm looking at submissions. So literally I have contacts with all the blues labels, individual artists, blues artists around the country, and they will send new music and new releases to me, just like they would a radio station in the old days. And, you get to listen to these and say, oh, I like that. So there's a lot of individual opportunity for you to almost direct. I'm going to give you a good example. Direct someone's career. This guy, J.P. Williams, who's from the Midwest, had contacted me early on when he released his first album, and he said, I like your show. I listened to it. Would you help me out? And I did. I played it all the time, and because I was reporting, I'm not saying that just my input, but myself and other DJs around the country who are doing the same thing, really established one of his songs from that CD has been on the top 20 in the Roots Music Reports for the last 32 weeks. So literally, that album should make one of the top 20. And when the album came out, he credited me in the liner notes, because of the help that not myself and other DJs have done to help them. So that's pretty exciting.
That's amazing.
It is. It's awesome. But yeah, they'll send you the CDs. Plus, there are repositories online that for broadcasters that you can you have to log in, and artists and labels submit their music to them, and then you can pull it down and listen to it and say, I'm going to play that on my show this week.
Wow.
So yeah, you have a big hand in helping to establish who.
So do you do, are any of your shows thematic? Are they just kind of random?
No, most of them are random, but I will do thematic shows. I've done Halloween shows. I've done, silly things like themes on dogs, and looked for songs that, every song had something to do about a dog.
So like Christmas is coming up?
I'll definitely have a Christmas show, yeah. And then, actually after Thanksgiving, I'll start playing, 1 or 2 Christmas songs in the rotation in the playlist each week until I get to Christmas week, and then I'll do typically and then the end of the year I'll do my top 20 albums. And so, people who listen to the show, and I get people who write to me emails and who love listening to the show.
Really?
Yeah, and it harkens back to when, as I can remember, I've always felt like I've been a big fish in a little pond, and I think a lot of us feel that way. But when I was working at NNH, I used to have fans, who would call all the time. And on my birthday, they would come by the studio on Bow Street, and I'd look out the window and there'd be these balloons, happy birthday, Brett, and they'd have a birthday cake. Or at Thanksgiving, they would come with a Thanksgiving meal and bring it to you. And so when I talked about radio being rewarding, that's one of the things in parallel to acting that is rewarding, because you do have people who like the sound of your voice, who like the music that you like and play, and so they will listen to you, and they listen each week, and so it's a blast. Yeah.
So, getting back to nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
Does a show, every episode, I don't know what you call them, a show episode, whatever.
Episode, yeah.
Okay. Does it have an outline, like you do so many songs, then you pretend to go to a commercial break, or you go to a commercial, how is it structured?
My particular show is not commercial, so I don't get any
okay.
monetary So I don't do commercial breaks. I will usually run. I do have a show clock, an hour clock, which most radio does, where you'll have 10 minutes and then you'll do a station ID or a PSA or promo, and then another 10 minutes, and then at the 20 sweep you will have another ID or something like that. I also have liners that the artists will submit, like, hey, this is Victor Wainwright, and you're listening to Blow Me Away Blues with Brad Bertolucci, and I'll plug those in. So there's a definite format to the hour, and I produce all of the stuff for my show, for the syndicated show. For the new station that I'm on, Blues Music Fan, they have their own station IDs and promos. They're nonprofit and they're listener supported. So there's no commercials. You're not going to listen in and hear Geico commercials or anything like that. So that is one of the things that people like, because even though it's structured and it's professional, it's mostly music. Mm-hmm. I like to think that there's a little bit of personality, because I remember personality radio. Yeah. So I enjoy doing that. I like to have some sort of personality. I like to think that people not only are listening because of the music, but, they think that I'm like, hey, that's my friend Brett, I'm going to tune in and listen to him, So I think that's an aspect of the show too.
So you structure your show. Yep. You've pulled songs. Are these all MP3s, I'm assuming, or something like that?
They can be. They can be. You're
not using vinyl, right?
No, it's all digital. Or a lot of submissions from the artists and labels are on CD, but you burn them to an MP. You burn them and convert them to an MP3. So the software that I use, it's called SAM Broadcaster. It's a professional level software made by this company, Spatial Communications.
And what does that give you? What's the purpose of that software?
It's like if you've ever been to a wedding and the DJ has two turntables up on the table, and he's got speakers and a stack full of CDs. That's what this software does. It literally visualizes each turntable on the screen, and you have a visualization of every song in your library. You can sort them by artist, by song title, you can sort them by this is a song, this is a PSA, this is a jingle, this is a liner. And so at any given time, especially for the live show, if I'm taking requests online, I can just go in, type a search, pull it up, and put it in within a minute or within a song. And then, with downloading software, literally with a high band, network that we have, we can pull a song down that you don't have. And if somebody says, hey, I'd like to hear this song that's not in your library, you download it, because you have these repositories that I talked about that you can access and just download the music, and play it. So it's a blast. It's fun. It's entertaining. It's rewarding. And
you pull all this together. You've got your, I'm assuming, a laptop or whatever.
Desktop with a big, huge monitor. Yeah.
Okay. There's nobody else there, right?
No, okay, no, just me. In my little fantasy world with my 45.
Okay, thanks. That's what I'm trying to figure out. What does this look like? So you sit there and do a show.
Yeah, I got my headsets on, and I'm listening to everything, and I'm...
No interaction with anybody necessarily.
No. I mean, in the syndicated shows, yes, in that interview process that I talked about, but again, it's recorded. So like yourself, I'll take the raw audio and edit that and chunk it up. But I'll have those pieces ready in that software so that, I'll do a live break and say, okay, hey, we had a chance to talk to Victor Wainwright the other day, and let's hear what he said about this. And then you hit it, and it plays, and then you fade the song in. And so, there's that. But there's nobody, there's no audience, there's no, there is.
Yeah, right.
In your head, right, in your mind, you're imagining. And I like to imagine that it's like this, that you're talking to somebody. I'm not talking to 100 people or 1,000 people, or I'm talking to Ray. Hey, man, this is a great song. This just came out this week, and let's listen to it together,
Yeah.
Well, there's people, but there aren't.
I know. So this is it's very intriguing.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and you go through, and how long is the show?
Now it's an hour.
It is.
It's an hour, yeah. I cut back to an hour. I don't know why. It's just easier. I don't do the interview element anymore, because it was getting trying to schedule them, and technology wise, it's unless you have a a professional studio, it's difficult because you're using Skype or you're using Discord, which is another service out there that allows you to talk using the internet, but it's never the best quality as somebody sitting in the studio, with a mic in front of you. So
how did you get these people to interview? So you're this guy in New Hampshire that nobody knows.
Self-promotion, my friend. It's a wonderful thing. You make yourself bigger than what you are, right? It's that's always the case for me. It's always been that way. I call up. I'll get online. I'll go to the label. I'll go to their Facebook. Everyone's got a Skype and a Facebook and a Twitter and a Facebook today, right?
Yeah.
And I'll send them a message. Say, hey, my name is, I have a pseudonym. I use Brett Bertolucci, and I'll get into that story in a minute.
Good, because I wanted to go there.
Yeah. So I would say I have this syndicated radio show, and I report to blah, blah, blah. So that, okay, I want to talk to this guy, right? So they'll usually have either their agent or themselves will call you or email you and say, yeah, let's set something up. So you set up a phone interview, and you connect, via your system, and you do this like you and I are doing, except over the phone, and you have a conversation with them about the album, about their music, about their careers, their influences, and then you cut it up and you put it on the air. And so, and so I've gotten to the point where in the blues community, my show is known enough to where I can write to someone and they'll say, okay, yeah, we've heard of him. Let's get you, let's get you in touch with him. So the Brett Bertolucci.
Yeah, go ahead.
13 years ago, I started playing this game online called Second Life. My son introduced it to me, oddly enough. And it's basically this online 3D interactive world where you create an avatar or a person, a persona. And Second Life mirrors pretty much anything that you can do in real life. So it's a place to go play, right? There's clubs, there's restaurants, there's role-play communities. And so I got involved in a role-play community. And there was a radio station in that role-play community, right? And I said, I can do this. And so myself and a couple of other people got together, and we created this radio station within the Second Life community, and it took off. And it literally overtook the other station that was there. And at any given time, there were hundreds of people listening to the station and, playing the game in this role-play community. And so we
like to have their radio on in the kitchen.
Well, they're in, they're online, and they're in this room, this role-play room, and there's an audio button at the top that you can push, and your stream goes into that room, and they're listening to it. And you're talking to them, and you're playing commercials that are specific to that community within Second Life. And that was actually, today, that station still is monetarily supported through commercialization of the Sims, if for lack of a better word, that they're in. Because these role-play communities will reach out and say, here, we want you to promote our Sims so people will come visit us, and we'll give you X amount of lindens, which is the monetary value within the world, which equates to dollars. And I'll give you a funny story before I continue to get to the point of Brett Bertolucci.
Yes.
But my son made a living doing that. He was a singer in Second Life clubs. And so these clubs would hire him. His little avatar persona would come walk into this club, get up on the stage, and he had tracks on his computer, and he sang live at home on the microphone. And his audio came over while his little avatar is on the stage, and people would tip him.
This is incredible.
It's pretty wild. So when you first signed up for Second Life, you created a name. And they would say, okay, here's a list of 20 surnames that you can select from. Bertolucci happened to pop up. And I said, well, that's cool. And I used my first name, Brett Bertolucci, and that's how he became. And, he was the persona behind that radio station. And then when I started to do my blues show, I started it on that station. So it was Blow Me Away Blues with Brett Bertolucci. And it just stayed that way because I figured, I've already got the branding. I've paid people to make jingles for me and, liners and stuff like that. So there was a signature voice to the show. And so I just kept it.
I'm glad you clarified that, because I would see on Facebook.
It's Brett Berlucci.
Yes. And I'm like, God, he looks an awful lot like Brett.
Yeah.
I wonder if they do stuff together. I guess in a way, yes.
Yes, we do.
So I'm glad you clarified that. Who has been one of your best interviews that you're like, you landed, it was just gold?
Chris Daniels. Probably not really well known in the blues community, but he just had a really great story. He's a survivor, cancer survivor, and he just got very personal. Most of the interviews are very shallow, because they're trying to promote an album or promote, their next show and, or whatever. But Chris really opened himself up and got very personal with me, and I was moved by it. So, yeah, there's no question. His name just popped right up first. And it's nice because I have all these archival interviews, so, occasionally I'll go back and listen to them. And they can, his was motivating to overcome something, like that. I'm always fascinated with cancer survivors anyways. I find that they've got more strength than I'll ever have.
Yeah, they go through some brutal stuff. Do you ever replay some of those?
I have. Yeah, I have. The current format doesn't really allow it. Although I have an interview coming up that I'm scheduling with this artist called Emmy Sunshine. And I started following her career when she was 9. And she's 15 now. So she was like this internet sensation. But she categorizes her music, and it's more Americana country than anything. But there's a blues song called Country Ain't Nothing But Blues with a Twang. And so in my last couple of shows, I've played some music from her new CD because I just love her. And I'm hoping that I can help her to become a crossover into the blues. She's doing very well on the countryside and with the Americana labels and stuff like that. But my hope is that, maybe someone in the blues side will say, hey, this kid sounds great. And she really does. Look her up. Emmy Sunshine. That's all you got to look up on Facebook. She's really good. Really good.
Do you ever do any live, from like a live event? Have you gone to any?
I haven't. It's very easy. Easy as long as you're in a place that has a high-speed internet connection. It's funny you ask that because for years I tried to get the New Hampshire Theater Association to let me do a live show at the Theater Awards.
Gina, are you listening?
Hello. But how cool would that be? Because one of the biggest gripes that I think a lot of the people in the theater community have is that they have to wait so long to hear who's winning if they can't go. How cool would it be to be able to sit at your house up in Lebanon or up north because you can't make it to the show, to be able to listen and hear the awards live, on the radio. I think that would be
you could
cool.
Interview them after they're done.
Yeah, you could have them come up and interview them, talk about the experience, and congratulate them. Yeah. Absolutely,
do a little red
carpet show before the show.
Gina, you're listening, Katie.
But yeah, all you would need is a spot in the back of the room with your laptop and your software and a connection to the internet. And you tie into the soundboard. You could literally tie into what's playing up on the stage and have people be able to experience that. And again, like I said, I tried for years and they're like, nah, we don't want to do that. I don't know why, but let's get that done.
Yeah, we want to find out why, Gina.
Well, in fairness, I don't know. She may not have been on the board at that time.
Brian Halpern. Yeah, I think that'd be a great idea.
Yeah,
right?
wouldn't it?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Because I thought about doing a podcast from there.
Right.
Same thing. It would be the same show, but
the podcast, I'm guessing you would record though, pre-record like this, and then
stick my iPhone.
Yeah.
Stick a microphone on it.
Yeah, but live
stream
an IP address. I have streams that you literally say, okay, when you're at home, you plug into this browser, go to this website, and you push the button, listen, and there it is. It could be posted right on the NHTA website, tied in with that very easily. Gina.
This is taking it to the next level. This is like futuristic.
Right?
That'd be wonderful. So your love for the blues, where does that come from? As opposed to maybe hard rock or metal or elevator music? Where does the blues come from? What's your background?
I think, well, again, I wasn't introduced until the 80s, but I think the music speaks to emotion for me, more than any other genre. I mean,
it's a very distinct genre from like
it is,
country
yeah.
and
Well, yeah, I mean, there's blues rock, which borders on rock, but blues, yeah, there's a very specific makeup of the bar structures, and but more important than that, I think it's the stories that are, it's very similar to country in that respect, where I said country ain't nothing but blues with a twang. There's a story behind it. There's emotions, and blues is. Just as always spoke to my soul. I know it sounds corny, but it speaks to my soul more than rap or pop. I enjoy listening to that music, and for years as a mobile DJ, I played it. But blues speaks to me. I can hear the message in it, and I can make it my own message. It may not even be the message. It speaks to me.
Who are some of the mainstream blues artists?
Oh gosh,
would I know any? I must know some.
You may not. But a Guy obviously is probably the most contemporary that crosses genres, and he'll fill places, large venues. But most blues artists, Kenny Wayne Shepherd, you might know, Coco Montoya, Victor Wainwright. But the thing that I love about blues is that still today you can go to a small venue in New Hampshire. Milford, for example, has this place called Zingers now. Before that, it was Nelson's Candy in, I can't think of the town. Anyways, but there's little venues like that where you can go 100 seats and see top-level blues artists in a venue that you're from me to you from them. And I like that. I think that, rather than going, it's always great to go see Elton John at a stadium, with 10,000 people. But for me, it's more personal. It's more intimate. It's more emotional. I have more of a relationship with the artist, with the blues. And there's a lot of, you've got Zingers right now in Milford. There's a place, and there's a person by the name of Brooklyn. I forget her first name. Her last name is Brooklyn, and she lives in Vermont. So she does these blues house parties for $25, and you bring a potluck plate with you. And she hires people like Jason Ricci, Victor Wainwright, and top-level blues to come into her house. There's like 40 or 50 people in this house, and they have a full-blown blues concert with a potluck supper. And, $20-25.
Why did they do that?
And it's called Brooklyn in Vermont. And it's just,
great
there's
name.
places.
That's a great name.
Yeah, and there's places like that all over the blues that do that. Little blues clubs. And God, knocking on wood here. There's a place on Elm Street that I've been seeing every time I drive by it. It's got a pig as a logo. I forget the name of it, but it looks like it's going to be a blues club. And I wish the heck they would hurry up and open, because it's been there for over a year. And it's driving me crazy. But that's the kind of place that you would see some of these artists at. Just a small little venue where, gosh, this is cool. This is the way. And it almost harkens back to, this is what it must have been like for people like Little Walter and Howlin' Wolf sitting in those little bitty clubs in Chicago and Memphis and, Kansas City, with 30, 40, 50 people, and getting a message across. A lot of the blues artists today are doing, protest music too, which is like stuff we heard in the 60s, but it's a great venue to do that. There's an artist called Shamika Copeland now who just released a whole album of protest music politically and socially, and so it's pretty cool because there's a little bit more depth to the music, I think, the blues.
Where would you like to take your blues business to? Are you satisfied with what you're doing and the size of it and all that? Or you're like, man, if I just had
No, I'm totally satisfied with it. I really am. It satisfies me. So I think, there might have been there was a time when I first started the syndicated show where my only goal was, how many stations can I get on? And it's not about that anymore. And it's not about how many people are listening, because I know the people who are listening love it, and that's all that matters. They're enjoying it, and they identify with the music as I do. So for them, it's an experience, and I'm especially noticing it on this new station because, like I told you, it's live. You can actually see in this software who's listening. Not it doesn't say Ray Dudley, but it says there's a person listening from Manchester, New Hampshire right now. There's a person listening from Spokane, Washington. There's 10 people in Seattle. There's 20 people in Italy. There's, and so you can see that. And then they have a chat room where you can say, hey, guys, I'm in the chat room. Come on over. And people can log in and you can have a conversation with them as you're doing your show. You can talk about music, whatever it is you want to talk about. And so there's a personal aspect to it, too, that's rewarding.
Do you get demographic feedback from any place that tells you like where your largest fan base might be or what age they are? Or?
I could. Again, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. There would have been a time when I did. And the station that I run, I mentioned that I run a station, has all that reporting capability.
What does that mean, you're running a station?
I have...
a literal building?
No. If you go to whipblues.com...
I was out there the other day. I saw your link for it.
Yeah.
That's yours?
And it on a cloud somewhere, right? There's a server. And you take all your audio files and you send them to that server, and it connects to the internet via an IP address. And then you link that IP address to your website or, your Facebook, your Twitter, whatever it is you do, and you send that link out, and that's how people listen. Yeah, it's a legitimate radio station out there.
So you
and
own
it's
that
tied. I do. It's
tied.
It's tied to. It's actually tied to that station that I mentioned that I started in Second Life. So for royalty wise, we're tied there with ASCAP. So yeah, and there's not a lot. It's not as big an audience as the station that I'm on right now. I'm a blues music fan, but it's got a good listener base, And you can see times a day, you see what shows are more popular than others, and
so you own. So are there other people adding to your station?
On that particular station, I solicit other syndicated blues DJs to do shows. So I have a guy by the name of Cleve Baker who does Confessing the Blues, which is probably one of the biggest syndicated blues shows in the country. Another guy out of Canada that does a show called At the Crossroads. I have a gospel blues hour that this guy Bill Kenton does. And so these guys will do their shows at their studios or their homes, and they'll send those files to me weekly. And then I upload them to the server, and you can specify on the server at this time, on this day, this show plays, And then you can plug in, the liners and the station IDs and all that. So, yeah.
So these folks can own like the 9 o'clock hour or the 10 o'clock hour, and every evening at 9 o'clock you could tune into your favorite.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
So in a way, this is not displaced radio, but it's very much like the next level of radio?
I think so.
I used to love radio.
Yeah, terrestrial radio is changing. It's still there. But if you look in markets, there used, like in Manchester, for example, there used to be WFEA, WGIR. There were 5-6 stations. Now there's one. You have ZID, and I guess GIR is still.
Yeah, if they have an FM too. So.
Yeah, and then you've got community MNH. I think it's a catch-22, Ray, because it's very easy for people to do internet radio, and then the artists suffer because they're not getting their royalties and that type of stuff from a lot of stations. So that's
so there's no oversight then from who can play
not a lot.
Is there?
Not a lot.
I know, like if you tried it on Google or something, they'll tag you.
No. But if you just have an IP address like this, if you just do Shoutcast is a standard of broadcasting in the internet radio. If you Google Shoutcast, Shoutcast radio stations, there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of them. Anyone with an internet connection can make one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just stream music without paying a royalty for it.
And there's FM modules that you can get for your computer now that you could literally set up an FM module on your computer and broadcast a mile or two from your house. If you wanted to, I'm sure the FCC would get involved with that
at some point.
So
I want to touch on the royalties. Do you pay for
the stations that broadcast are responsible for those, and there's a number of ways. Like I said, the station network that I'm tied in with does ASCAP, but there's also BMI. There's SOCAN, which is Canada. And that's where the challenge comes in from an internet broadcasting perspective, because a lot of times you don't know who's responsible for it. And now there are companies that are monopolizing, just like anything, like cable did, and like, so you're paying a third party who's disseminating the funds. You don't really know how that's being spread out. So it can be challenging, but ASCAP is who we're going through. There's no way to look and say, okay, what's the right way to do it? That's the challenge. I've never seen a manual. I'm sure.
The internet's thrown a wrench into a lot of this stuff.
Sure has with everything.
So, how about marketing? How are you? Do you want to do more? I mean, do you want more exposure? Do you care? No. And how do you market it besides Facebook?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, that Facebook,
because that's only your 25 friends.
Well, so they say. I mean, I've got
all right, maybe 20.
I don't know how many I've got. I got a couple of. I got like 3,000 or 4,000 at this point of quote unquote friends.
Uh-huh. How many of them are bots?
Yeah. But no, I mean, I market just word of mouth. Internet. I do it online. Are there other ways to do it? Yeah. The station I'm on right now is a member of what's called the Blues Foundation, which is a foundation that supports blues artists medically and stuff like that if they have hardships. But it's kind of like the official genre foundation in the world. And so that station's a member there, and they get their logo and stuff promoted on their website. But most of the internet artists, DJs, are self-promoted, or through the stations that they work for. They'll promote the show. But even then, it's my responsibility to get on my Facebook and say, hey, I got a show coming up tomorrow at 6 or tonight at 6, tune in.
Do you ever feel any pressure to have to crank out a show? I mean, I
did, and that's why I went from the 2 hours to the 1.
Yeah.
Because I was burnt out. Man, it was getting to be a chore again, and I didn't want it to be that. So now I cut back to the hour, and I don't care who listens. I care.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to invest a lot of my energy and a lot of my time, because it's more rewarding to do it this way, to just have the show, and if people want to listen, they know how to do it, and I'm having fun.
Have you? Do you guys get together? Are there other radio station owners, and you have like these mini conventions, or
not that I'm aware of? There are blues.
There
are blues. Like there's this big blues convention annually in Vegas called the Blues Bender, which is huge, and they literally have 30, 40 blues artists at it, and it's a whole 4 or 5 day event. And then there's blues festivals. Like there's one in New Boston every summer that has some pretty decent artists at it, and some local blues artists that you can go to. So it's a great way. I mean, blues is one of those genres where it is supported that way. It's supported by small communities of blues lovers who have blues foundations within their states. Like there's the Granite State Blues Foundation. Most states have a blues foundation.
There is?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's who sponsors the Blues Festival in New Boston. So there's a foundation that, and they will promote new blues artists. And there's a thing called the International Blues Challenge every year in Memphis, which is a competition for up-and-coming new blues artists. And there's hundreds and hundreds, and they perform at all kinds of venues throughout the city, mostly in the Beale Street area, on all the blues clubs downtown. And so the foundations around the country will have their local competitions, and then they'll select, okay, this is going to be the representative from New Hampshire that we send to the International Blues Challenge this year. And so that's one way of artists to, get to the next level.
And do they invite broadcasters like yourself? And
They don't, but broadcasters can certainly go. I don't consider myself at that level. This guy, Cleve Baker, that I mentioned, I consider him to be at that level. Yeah. I would think that there are probably festivals that, would hire him as a master of ceremonies, if you would. Cleve Baker's here, to talk about. So, yeah, I suppose that opportunity is there, but it doesn't interest me.
Anybody ever recognize you from...
No.
No?
No.
Really?
No. Why? I got a face for radio. I use a cartoon for my logo. It's,
I did notice that.
I do. I have gone. If I see that an artist is going to be local and I really want to see them, I'll contact the label and I'll say, hey, anyway, you're getting a comp, and so your name will go on the guest list, and so when you get there, Oh, yeah, I've heard your show, because you're introducing yourself at the door because your name's on the guest list.
Right.
Yeah, as far as getting recognized, that's probably the only way you're going to do it. Hi, I'm Brett Bertolucci. I have a radio show.
You might know me.
Yeah, you might know me. You might have heard me on the interwebs. I sit at home in my underwear and produce a show.
That was a mental picture I did.
Yeah, right.
Have you been to the new venue downtown Concord here, the Bank of New Hampshire stage?
I haven't. No. Tell me about it.
Well, I haven't been in it.
Oh, wait a minute. That's not the one on the first floor of the Capitol Center?
So the Capitol Center, it's their smaller venue.
Yeah.
It's downtown Concord.
Yeah, when you go down, when you go on the first floor, it's right there.
No, it's not in that building.
Oh, all right.
It's not in
because
there.
I've gone to blues shows there.
Oh, okay.
At the Capitol Center, when you go in, it's not in the auditorium part; it's on the first floor.
Yeah, this is not in that building at all. It's right down the street from
So
it.
I have not been there yet.
So it's catered for that kind of small audience type of venue. Yeah,
I'll have to check it
they're
out.
busy. Yeah, you need to go on their website. They have a ton of stuff that comes in. Usually all small artists.
Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming blues because I know there's some places up in the North Country too that have a lot of blues artists that come in all summer.
Which would be great. I mean, I don't know. Joe Gleason, I've had him in here twice because he's the head of the venue. I had him in once before it opened and then once after it's opened to talk about it. So if you can get in touch with him, you may be able to he can probably tell you when the artists come in.
Sure.
Maybe you can, yank them for a quick interview or something.
That'd be kind of cool, right?
Yeah, I think. Right?
Yeah.
Or even go into the show, maybe do something before or after the show. And I don't know how all that works. Gina, we need you. Tell us.
NHTA live.
Well, I think that answered all my questions.
We've said it all. We've done it all.
Yeah.
That's it. Howard Stern. That's awesome.
And there you go. Another great one in the tank. That one's going off to the memorial. Have a great day.